First thing, I must admit that I took the intro idea from Scale Model Club number 2 here on YouTube. The reason I'm saying this is that I have been recently accused by a viewer that I'm stealing other modelers' ideas and not saying it. No shit, Sherlock. With that being said, what's up, glue sniffers? We have a Halftruck to paint and weather, so we better get started. First thing, we have to hide this ugly gap in the back. I thought that a rolled tarp will do the trick. I tried Tamiya Quick Type for the first time, and I must say that it is a lovely putty. Talco powder is your friend, and so is the pizza cutter. I was using a toothpick as a rough measure guide. First you cut it, and then you roll it. You have to use a very soft touch, because otherwise everything will be smashed up. A thin cord was used as rope, and you can see that the compressed area looks quite well. A drop of thin CA to block the knots, and we are ready. With the putty leftovers, I quickly made some cloths on the other cargo. Those things are always a nice touch. When you finish the posing, you should wash away the excess talco with some water and a soft brush. I cut away the door handles, applied some medium CA, and put the tarp in place. It's not much, but the job is done. Because of a bad experience in the past, I applied some thermo-shrinking tube on the axles. Just put the pieces on and shrink them with some heat. Be careful not to set everything on fire, if possible. Because we painted the interior in the build video, now we have to mask it. I used Tamiya masking tape on the outer parts, and some blocks of foam were stuffed in the inner parts. I finished the job with some masking putty on the complicated spots. Now, all we have to do is to pray this will work. All the other components were mounted on toothpicks, and some Patafix was used to mask the contact points and the holes. A piece of balsa wood with 2 toothpicks was glued on the bottom. Now we can hold the model without touching it. And here we have my rudimental painting jig. I think that there is no need for a detailed explanation. Simple, and it gets the job done. If you like my work and you want to support me big time, I would invite you to check out my Patreon page. Everything that you see in my videos and much more is covered here. We have a Discord chat room, so you can post your photos to get instant help from me and other nutheads like me. Bottom line, you will get a lot for a small amount of money. There is a 7-day trial period, so you can check it out for free. A big thank you to all of my Patreons. I hope that you will join them too. See you there. Let's go painting. All the parts were washed with isopropanol, and we can start with a coat of Mr. Surfacer Black Primer. I like to mix it directly in the cup. I fill half of the cup with Mr. Leveling Thinner, and then I add 3 brush loads or BLs of primer. Mix it well, and we are ready to go. As always, the same old story. Be sure to cover all the spots, and take your time to do it properly, because if you will miss some hard to read spots later, they will result in deep shadows, so yeah, take your time. This time I decided to give the black and white method a try. So, after the black primer, here comes some Tamiya white. The first hand is an overall even coat, and because the paint is thin and applied lightly, the result will be a nice grey surface. With the second hand, things will become more interesting. I was concentrating on the more exposed areas, the coat was a bit more heavy, and I was even trying to apply it in an uneven pattern. The uneven pattern thing is still not going great, but I'm trying and improving. The steps were the same for all the other components. You know what? I like this brush load approach for mixing paints. The only trick is to use always the same shitty brush. Mine is something like this. Your will be different, so you will adjust the formula. We can easily measure the amount of thinner with a simple pipette, and then we count the brush loads. For the base coat the formula was 2 brush loads of paint and 1.5 ml of Mr. Leveling thinner. When you're done, clean the mixing brush in some nitro thinner, and it will be clean and dry in a few seconds. The lower part is always a good point for start. Just apply the paint without bothering with all the recesses. On the upper part, I was again trying to do the uneven pattern thing. The whole point is that the previous black and white steps remain somehow visible. So, go lightly and with a lot of thinner. Here you can see the application nicely. And just like that, the base coat is done. Now come the hairy stuff. First camo pattern in my life. And just to start in style, I haven't even choose the easiest one. Those things are not stains and they are not lines either. They are something in between. We will see. I made quite a lot of testing, and here is the trick that helped me a lot. First, you have to find 2 color pencils that matches the camo colors. Luckily, with 2 kids, those things are everywhere around the house. I was drawing the camo shapes using the pencil lightly. There was no way for me to draw them nicely and randomly enough on the vehicle, so I was copying the instructions as close as possible. And then all we have to do is fill them. The paint was even thinner as for the base coat, and I still have a lot to learn. I was trying to obtain a somehow faded look instead of the full filled shape. I was applying the paint in 2 steps. First I was blocking in the shape slightly, and later I redid them another time. Some of the lines from the pencil were still visible, and I quite like it. The first camo in my life is done. I'm happy that this is after me. Let's move on. I decided to apply a coat of gloss varnish. It will be easier to work with the oil wash later, and we have decals coming, so... The decals are nicely made, and working with them was quite straightforward, but there is a but. Let's say a huge but. The registration plates decals were terribly bigger than the mounts on the model. It seems to me that no one at DasWerk checked this out. The solution? I applied the decals on a thin sheet of styrene. I cut them out and then I painted the edge in black. Some spacers from styrene were glued in place with CA, and the plates were glued with Revel Contacta, so I had all the time to position them properly. A nice additional detail, what can I say? I blocked the decals with another coat of gloss varnish. The airbrushing was done, the fingers were itching, and I couldn't wait to open the interior to see how it will be. And well, not bad at all. I will have to retouch some transition areas, but all in all, it looks cool. It's time to give some contrast or depth to our vehicle. This time I opted for an oil paint wash. If you have to buy just one oil paint, raw umber is the way to go. This dark brown shade works with almost anything. I was using ordinary white spirit for thinning. The consistency was something like this, and I applied it around all the details. After about 30 minutes, I took a dry brush or a dry piece of paper towel and started cleaning and blending the paint. The next day, I took a highlight color and highlighted the details such as bolts and protruding parts. This color is a lighter version of the base color, and in this case I took the Dunkelgelb base highlight color from the ammo modulation set. Quite a difference, huh? Let's see the procedure on the upper part. The gloss coat is there to help us with the wash step. I was applying the wash all around the details. The rivets are so small that I was washing them all together. After about 30 or 40 minutes, I did the blending with a soft dry brush. When I say dry, I mean bone dry, no white spirit whatsoever. The oil paint is being nicely distributed around, and it is mostly left around the details. When you finish a segment, clean your dry brush in nitro thinner. The brush will be clean again, and it will be dry in a few seconds, because nitro evaporates quickly. Now the micro rivets stand out nicely, but I wanted to highlight them. I tried with a small brush, but they were too small. My club colleague Christian helped me out with the toothpick approach. You take the highlight color and the toothpick with the flattened point. Pick some color, do 2 or 3 dots on the palette to unload the excess, and you are good to do about 3 or 4 rivets. If you screw something up, and you will do it, just wait a few minutes for the paint to dry, and you will be able to scrape away the mistakes with a sharp pointed toothpick. Time to highlight some other details. Here we are talking about stuff like handles and other exposed edges. I also did the transition areas between the interior and the exterior. Those camo acrylics are not the best for brush applications, and working with them on a glossy surface was like cleaning your ass with a plastic bag. Next time I will do the highlighting after the flat coat of varnish, and I advise you do the same. So, the wash step and the highlighting is done, and we can see the result. Everything is standing out nicely. Some areas may seem exaggerated, but the further steps will turn them off. So, at this point you need all the contrast you can get. Time for a coat of flat varnish, and I opted for VMS top coats again. Again, the airbrushing experience was strange, to say the least, but it was the same the last time. And again, the results were great, as they were the last time, so what can I say? A great flat varnish. Something new on the rubber department. The base mix was the same as the last time, German camo black brown and dark grey in equal amounts. And this thing has a lot of rubber details. Basically all the wheels. This time I tried to make the wheels more interesting before weathering. I wetted the surface with water, and then I did some stains with neutral grey. I think that this can be called mapping. I was concentrating the effect on the more exposed areas. Then I took black and applied it in the shadow areas. I did some stains too. Both colors were quite thin. I was going back and forward with both paints a few times to build up the effect. And the results? It is a nice variation compared to just the base color alone. And the process was quite enjoyable too. I like it. I painted the inside of the headlights with the steel color. The edges and some other details were painted with satin black. I discovered Ultra Glue from Colle 21. It is a kind of quick PVA glue and is excellent for stuff like lenses. The whole point of this glue is that it will dry completely transparent in the end. Good to know, and to have something like this in the drawer. In the chipping department, nothing new. I still suck at it and don't like it. I made the light chips with a small brush, and I added some white to the highlight color to make it stand out even more. This time I tried to add some variation with another tone. This was the Dunkelgelb base from the ammo modulation set. The dark steel chipping step is the only part that I like. I used my usual mix, and I was addressing only the most damaged spots. Here I was simulating the worn metal made by soldiers entering and exiting the vehicle. The acrylic part of the chipping is done. Not great, mostly exaggerated, so same old story. I have to improve a lot with this. I added some streaking rust effects from ammo to the dark chips. It is an enamel product and it was blended with white spirit. The chips turn a bit rusty, and the whole area gets a warmer hue. The MVP of the whole chipping process, in my opinion, is the HB pencil. All you have to do is rub the dark chips where you want a polished metal effect. It can be further spread around with a silicone brush. I just love this step and it is super easy. Chipping done, time to get dirty. I wanted some dirt deposits under the fenders and on the wheels, so I opted for my DIY texturing paste. The nice thing is that it comes dry and in a neutral color, so you can add the acrylic color you want and as much water you want. Super controllable in my opinion. You just apply the paste where you want it with a brush. And then come the edge blending step. You should be quick, because there is plaster in the mix. Take a wet brush and make the transition with stippling. You can always load up the volume later, so concentrate on the blending step. Because the wheels are so complicated on this Halftruck, I decided to mount them first and trick them later. Before that, some worn metal has to be done on the sprocket wheel. I was re-drilling the holes slightly bigger, so there will be no problems later. Then I mark the spots where one wheel is covering the other. Those hidden spots will be loaded with glue. I took medium CA from Colle 21 and glued the wheels together step by step. I was always checking that the sub-assemblies goes on and off easily. After some time I was left with 2 pieces instead of, I don't know, 46. I also cut away half of the axles for easier installation. There is the video about tracks, painting and weathering on my channel, so go and check it out. I don't know if they were meant to be workable, but I gave my best to make them that way. And I'm so glad that I did it. They were pushed on the sprocket wheel with quite a bit of force. When you put them on, they will remain there, so you have to think about where you will place the sprocket wheel and where you will join the track in the end. I was aiming for the lower flat part. And then it is all about posing them correctly and gluing them point by point. It is a lot of work, but I was afraid this will be much harder. In the end, I made our sub-assemblies bulletproof with some thin CA in the hidden spots again. Well, this doesn't look bad at all. After the texturing paste, the wheels look something like this. The paste looks quite okay when dry. And here we have the fenders. It is time to make some dust, and light dust effects from camo was the main protagonist in this case. The dust application was basically made in 2 steps. First, I dry brushed some product straight from the bottle on the exposed parts of the earth accumulations. And then I moistened the surrounding area with white spirit and applied some product with a lot of white spirit. You should thin it down a lot. When you think that you have exaggerated, just add more thinner. You can start blending immediately. For this step, the flat dry brush is a perfect tool. Just drag the dust around by stippling. And working in segments is a must. Be careful, because the effect will pop out for good only when completely dry. So, if you think to add more, you should better stop right there. The dust effect can be also used as a wash, like in the case for the rubber wheels. Just make some tests in order to find the right consistency. Time to glue the wheels in place. Thin CA, that is called Fast by Colle 21, is perfect for this task. I just touched the contact points and the capillarity effect did the rest. The dusting is done, and now you can see how it looks when dry. Quite strong, right? Again, remember to go lightly with this little fella. Our dirt needs some contrast, don't you think? I did this with some oil brushers. First, I made a wash from dark brown and applied it to the biggest accumulations. And after this, another round of black. This time I was hitting more restricted areas, where I wanted some deep wet effect. White spirit was used for tinning. What else can we do? Some oil stains and engine grime, of course. This oil stains effect dries to a slightly glossy finish, and it was used to simulate some oil leaks here and there. And the engine grime was applied with the speckling method, to add some variation. The weathering is mostly finished, and it turned out quite good. Now we will talk about the cargo a bit. It is the most effective way to give a personal touch to an otherwise out-of-the-box model. And I also tested a very nice painting approach. Fast and simple, so let's take a look at it. It was pre-shaded exactly the same way as the whole vehicle, so black primer, overall thin coat of white and some more pronounced lights with white again. Now, the real MVP of this painting approach is the black outlining. This is not a wash. It is a proper, full covering thin line of black acrylic paint. I outlined all the details, and with hard things as these boxes, it's super easy. You just have to follow the lines of the details and the recessed parts. And after this step, here comes the glaze or filter of the base color. Here, the paint should be so thin that it's barely covering anything. After about 2 or 3 coats, you should end up with a nice base color, and the shadows and highlights from the previous steps should be visible. When you have the base colors blocked in, the real fun begins. It is all about making the elements interesting. We have chipping, making some shadows, reinforcing the highlights. We can use rust tones. Some stains are always welcome, especially on the tarps and soft stuff. Some speckling is always welcome too. We can simulate some fuel stains on the barrel, for example. Here I added some static grass around the bottles. I discovered later that cutting it first helps a lot. I blocked the grass with sand and gravel fixer from AK. So, here is our cargo finished. I wasn't explaining everything in detail, but you can find all the information on my Patreon page. I quickly put the cargo in place with some CA, and you can see that the difference is huge. I just don't think that that barrel would remain in place like that, so let's tie it down. I was using this fantastic rope-like string that I found in my wife's sewing kit. I was keeping the rope tight and I was blocking it to the turning points with thin CA. You can totally mount it white without painting it, because, as you can see, it soaks paint perfectly, even after the installation. After some highlights made with dry brushing, we have a pretty realistic and nice rope. At the end, I realized that I totally forgot the weathering step in the interior parts. This was loudly pointed out from my club colleagues. I was so drained from this model that I was considering skipping this step. But they were right. A least struggle, and here we are. The weathering is basically the same as for the rest of the vehicle. And they were right. It has to be done. Did I say that they were right already? So, glue sniffers, the model is done, and it was quite a project for me. I think that it turned out okay. I hope that you will find this video useful, because I'm trying hard making videos like this. Now I have an entire crew to fill up this beast. We are talking about modified poses, so I think that this will be the topic of the next video. And then there is a scenic base coming. I can't put out videos like this so often anymore, so you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram, and there is a Patreon if you want to be totally up to date. Until the next one, stay healthy, stay cool, and put some glue on the styrene too. Bye!